6:37, Team Hochberg Traffic Center time and Jim Talamonte.
Eastbound I-80 traffic is stop and go from Briggs to Cherry Hill Road. 8094 looks good. The Indiana Toll Road as well this morning. Checking the Edens Expressway. It's 15 minutes like Cook to Montrose. How about the same? Inbound Kennedy, traffic stuffed up from Division into the Burns Circle. It's 25 minutes O'Hare to downtown. A little quicker in the Express. Outbound 20 minutes to the airport. About Eisenhower. Delays kick in at St. Charles Road. It's 32 minutes, 390 to downtown. Outbound 29. The Stevenson 355 to Lakeshore Drive, 31 minutes. Outbound 28. Inbound Ryan. Looking at 30 minutes from 95th to downtown. Bishop Ford a little congested approaching the merge. That's traffic. I'm Jim Talamonte. On AM 560, The Answer.
Chicago's Morning Answer continues next. In our AM 560 Weather Center, we see sunshine for you today. High near 80. Partly cloudy and mild, 64 overnight. Breezy, very warm. Clouds and sun tomorrow, a high of 85. Couple of showers expected on Sunday. Remaining warm, high 78. 61 at O'Hare. Next news at 8. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
This hourly segment is brought to you by the Alpha Wealth Group, bringing the trilogy of estate, tax, and investment planning together. Visit alphawealthgroup.com for a free report.
Only the biggest stories, only the biggest guests, and only the biggest opinions. This is AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Everyone had a fear there would be explosive outbreaks of transmission in the schools, K through 12. We have to say that to date we have not seen those in the younger kids, and that's really an important observation. Yeah, it is. That's Michael Osterholm, director of the Center for Infectious Disease Research and Policy at the University of Minnesota, and a favored go-to epidemiologist of the D.C. Press Corps. Researchers at Brown University found extremely low levels of virus transmission over a 2-week period in schools that reopened. I'm not seeing, at this particular point, the rate I had expected, said Zeph Capo, president of the Texas branch of the American Federation of Teachers, Teachers Union HAC president. Oh, well, God, not the infectious disease expert he expected he was. It's still very early, writes Jacob Sullum over at Reason Magazine, and opening schools could eventually correlate with virus spread. But right now, the idea that it's impossible to reopen schools safely until some undetermined far-off point in the future, perhaps when a vaccine is available, is not holding up. Additionally, even this conversation I find troubling because it focuses strictly on cases rather than the nature of the cases. Yes, the volume, and then also a distribution of the severity. That it continues to be absent from so many of these conversations.
Of the 40,000 college students that have it, that are mostly asymptomatic, they have to get tested to see if they have a deadly virus. 5 hospitalized. 5. That's it. And most of them, they're not in ICU either. They're just hospitalized.
Science Magazine, a summary of the available research on COVID-19 in children and young people. That's the title of the piece. The abstract summary, children have a low risk of COVID-19 and are disproportionately harmed by precautions. The concluding paragraph, the role of children in transmission remains unclear. However, existing evidence points to educational settings playing only a limited role in transmission when mitigation measures are in place, in marked contrast to other respiratory viruses. In the event of seemingly inevitable future waves of COVID-19, there is likely to be future pressures to close schools. There is now an evidence base on which to make decisions, and school closures should be undertaken with trepidation given the indirect harms that they incur. Pandemic mitigation measures that affect children's well-being should only happen if evidence exists that they help, because there's plenty of evidence that they do harm. That's where we're at. Harming children based on the evidence, at least in those school districts that are shut down.
And what do we have here? Catholic schools, private schools, they've been open since the last 2 weeks of August. Yeah, there's a little blip, a little problem at Loyola. DePaul Prep's doing fine. I mean, no teachers have died, and that's what Jesse Sharkey, the CTU president, has been frothing at the mouth, waiting for one teacher to be in ICU. That'll prove his point, but it's not happening.
For more on all this, we're pleased to be joined again by Dr. John Lee, retired professor of pathology and National Health Service consultant across the pond there in Britain. Dr. Lee, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Good morning.
Good morning. I know from talking to you previously, you're not surprised that the evidence continues to mount that you and others who took the position on reopening schools were correct.
Well, I think that's true. I mean, obviously, one of the things you try and do as a scientist is always just check your assumptions, check whether what you've been saying is right. And you know, I did stick my head above the parapet on this one very early in the pandemic, that it really wasn't what people thought it was going to be, and I've kept on reviewing what I've been saying about that right the way through. But I have to say, it does seem to be panning out the way that I thought it was going to pan out, which is that you know, nothing much is happening out there. I mean, it's a nasty virus. It kills some people. You know, if you're already ill, if you're old, it can affect you badly. But actually, even most old people don't get it badly. So for the rest of us, the reaction has been a massive, massive own goal and overreaction, in my opinion.
And look, I'm not interested in spiking footballs and pretending to know things I don't know. There's still a lot of things that we don't know. That's what so many on the sort of the lockdown and bust tunnel vision have been doing. And so, for example, I wanted to get your reaction to this story out of the Washington Post that there may be a mutation of COVID-19 that's more contagious and could defeat masks and social distancing efforts. And, of course, the mask social distancing, there's science on that is dubious to begin with, so I don't know if that makes this necessarily more vicious. But scientists published a paper Wednesday, not peer-reviewed yet. A new strain of virus accounted for almost all the new cases of COVID-19 in a second wave that hit the Houston, Texas area. And I don't think you're surprised that the possibility the virus will mutate, but what's your understanding of the prevailing science in terms of mutations happening and what those mutations look like? Because I know a lot of public health professionals say, well, normally when it mutates, it probably weakens. It doesn't get stronger.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you'd expect. I mean, the trouble with a lot of the stuff that's being published on this, as you say, it's not peer-reviewed. And so because of COVID, we've sort of just put to one side all the normal mechanisms for making sure that science is telling us what we think it's telling us. So obviously that doesn't really help us understand what's happening. But you would expect that in a virus that is out there and it spreads on the wind, that those versions of the virus that are weaker and spread more easily would spread more easily, because when they infect people, they don't make them feel ill. They're asymptomatic, as you just mentioned in your introduction with students, and and so those people are still going out and about and spreading the virus unknowingly, and so more people catch a milder strain, and that's the way you would expect evolution of this thing to work. The catastrophists are always looking for the little straws that support their vision of the world, which is that it's all going wrong and we're all about to die. But of course, we never are dying, are we? We're all about to die tomorrow, and it's all going to be bad tomorrow. And what it reminds me of is that if you think about it, in ancient Egypt, the priests in ancient Egypt every night for 3,000 years, did rites to make the sun come up in the morning. But they seem never to have done the experiment of actually not trying it. And I think we're in the chicken licking school of government at the moment, which they say the sky is falling, we've got to do this, we've got to do that to stop it falling. Of course, it isn't falling, but it's always tomorrow that it's going to fall.
Yeah, and then the new buzz phrase and panic porn, we call it, is, oh, but wait until the regular flu season hits. Well, in the Southern Hemisphere, they pretty much skipped flu season. Yeah,
well, these things come and go. I mean, one of the underappreciated things, at least in the UK, from the death statistics, is that our Office of National Statistics, which does all the numbers for this, has records going back 27 years. And if you look at the last sort of 6 or 8 years, in fact, if you look at all of them, the last 6 or 8 years have been under average deaths because of flu, because we seem to have had a number of weak strains pretty much over the last few years. So the fact that there was an overhang of susceptible people waiting for the next respiratory virus, I don't know if that's true in the States as well, but it may well be, because these things tend to spread around the world. So the fact that we've had a bit of an excess death from this virus this year is not surprising. But if you look at the UK figures for the last 27 years, this year isn't first, it's not second, it's not third, it's eighth. So it's well within the envelope of what we normally experience, but without this crazy overreaction that we've had to the COVID virus.
Well, speaking of overreactions, arguably, get your perspective, Israel moving back to lockdowns, France, actually there's protestations in France against some of the restrictions, as we've seen protests in other Western European countries off and on over the last several weeks. But there definitely is an increase in cases in some countries, and what are those countries doing? Going back to the policies that they had been pursuing previously. They seem to have decided they are unwilling to learn much. They're just going to play politics with it. That was my view. And the same goes to some extent for Boris Johnson in Britain, doesn't it?
I think so, yeah. I mean, the trouble with it is, in fact, if your listeners are interested, I've got an article on a website called Spiked out today called The Making of Britain's Corona Catastrophe. And the three things I'm pointing out there are the overwhelming use of the precautionary principle by people in power, whereby they simply, any risk is unacceptable risk. But of course, it's sometimes called the better safe than sorry principle. But of course, is it true? I mean, sorry has a cost, but so does safe. And we're finding out that in this instance, the cost of safe is greater than the cost of sorry. The fact that scientists on these committees, always the catastrophists shout louder, don't they? It's always the people who shout loudest and claim doom and gloom, who get the ear of people, it seems. But, I mean, really, what's the justification for these lockdowns? I mean, it seems to me that the actual level of risk that, as you stated at the beginning again, is now evidence-based. The absolute level of risk is so far below the threshold that in a liberal democracy should enable compulsion of its citizens that I just don't know what we're doing. I mean, it's very much as I like talking to you guys, it's very disappointing to be here 6 months after all this started, still talking about this, still with so many people having restrictions placed on their lives,
yes,
on the basis of the slimmest of justifications.
Yes, and also on the topic of immunity, this has been a point of contention in our country over the week with some testimony from Dr. Tony Fauci on the Hill, some comments from Dr. Scott Atlas from Stanford, who's been added to President Trump's coronavirus task force, as you know. And this study out of Tokyo, the serology study that finds we may be wildly underestimating the number of people that have developed an immunity or possessed a cross-immunity to COVID-19 when they did testing. The 650 Japanese individuals that tested them, antibody presence. So the seroprevalence number went from like 5.5% to almost 47%. So perhaps maybe we're not into so-called herd immunity yet, but perhaps we're a lot closer than CDC and some of these other agencies are suggesting we are.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I think a lot of the assumptions that have been made about this virus in the modelling, in the rather naive modelling that's been done, this rather biologically uninformed modelling that's been done, are simply wrong. I mean, the authorities are doing antibody testing because they're cheap and easy, but antibodies aren't the normal way we fight viruses. The normal way we fight viruses is by different arm, or at least by one different arm of the immune system called T cells, and these are cells that search out cells that have got virus inside them. By seeing what the virus proteins in the cell membrane, and they kill those cells. They kill them before those cells can make lots more virus. So the thing is, those T-cell responses are much harder to test for than antibody responses, so they aren't being tested for. But 1 in 6 colds in a normal winter are caused by coronaviruses. So it wouldn't at all be surprising, given that we've all had many coronavirus infections in our lives. We've all had lots of colds. We've all had many coronavirus infections in our lives. It wouldn't be at all surprising if we have cross-reacting T cells. And when those studies have been done, and there are many studies from different labs now around the world that have been looked at this, 40 to 80% of people have cross-reacting T cells to this coronavirus. So it seems to me that correlates very, very well with the idea that children are pretty not susceptible to this, because children, as anybody's had young children, know, breed up viruses and all sorts of pathogens and constantly have runny noses, and we all catch runny noses from them. But the point is their immune systems are stronger, and they seem to be pretty much unaffected by this. As we get older, in the same way that our skin gets wrinklier, our immune system sort of metaphorically gets wrinklier as well. And so we're more susceptible to lots of pathogens, including ones that children and young people aren't susceptible to, including this coronavirus. So the actual way it works in the population of children and young people being pretty not susceptible at all, unless they've got other serious conditions, and old people becoming more susceptible, is just a normal way in which the body and age affects our response to pathogens. So I think it's highly likely, in fact, that because these studies show that 40 to 80% of people have cross-reacting T cells, it's highly likely that when they're actually detecting the antibodies in 10 or 15% of people, that we're probably already very close to herd immunity, which is why there's very little correlation now between case numbers and admissions to hospital and deaths. And really the only thing that we should be looking at is admissions to hospital and deaths, and they're very low. The other thing to say, actually, about case numbers is that these tests that they're doing for cases on the basis of PCR, the polymerase chain reaction, it's very difficult to interpret what they mean because there's no proper standardization of tests. Some people iterate the test 15 or 20 times, some people 30 or 40 times. You don't know whether you're measuring a fragment of a virus or the real infection itself. But many of the positive tests in the UK have been found to be called weak positives, and these people have maybe 100-fold less viral load than the strong positives that you find in hospital. These people are probably not infectious, and they're almost all asymptomatic. So it begs the question, what on earth are we doing to our lives and our economies for a disease which, as you say, in the majority of people, 95% of people, they don't even know that they've got it. The commonest symptoms of coronavirus are nothing, and the commonest sequelae of coronavirus are nothing. So what exactly do we think we're doing?
What exactly do we think we're doing? Great question. I'm going to make that a rhetorical one. Dr. John Lee, retired professor of pathology, NHS consultant pathologist. Dr. Lee, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer.
Your show keeps me alive during the week. There's nobody I'd rather listen to between 5 and 9 in the morning than you guys.
On AM 560, The Answer.
Attention maintenance coordinators and chief engineers. Welding is a craft requiring highly skilled personnel and specialized equipment. So who do you call when you need welding? Vans Industrial can perform all types of welding at your site or in their shop.
Hi, I'm Dave Van Camp, president of Vans Industrial. As a metal fabricator and installer, welding is a huge part of our business. At Vans, we have trained AWS certified welders, skilled in welding all types of alloys. We can weld carbon steel, stainless steel, brass, and aluminum with a variety of techniques, including MIG, TIG, and stick. And we have equipment to reach the farthest parts or the tightest areas of your facility.
Vans uses only the best and safest union-trained mechanics, insured at the highest level, to perform the job right. Call 833-VANS-IND to schedule your welding project today. That's 833-VANS-IND. Or visit vansindustrial.com. VANSindustrial.com. Vans Industrial, working safe since 1964.
Why is the new Sleep Number 360 smart bed your answer to better health and wellness? It's proven quality sleep. Any more questions?
Yes, I'm always freezing, and he overheats.
It's temperature balancing, so you can sleep better together.
But can it help keep us asleep?
It senses your movements and automatically adjusts to keep you effortlessly comfortable.
So I'll have more energy for yoga.
Yes, proven quality sleep is life-changing sleep.
Namaste.
Don't miss the final days to save up to $1,000 on the new Sleep Number 360 smart bed and adjustable base, plus free premium delivery. Ends Monday. To learn more,